Happy International Women's Day. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kamisha Swaby, and welcome to our panel discussion under the theme, Leveraging Women's Leadership to Achieve an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. Today, we have an excellent discussion planned. Allow me to introduce our esteemed guests. Joining us, we have Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, the Honorable Olivia Grange, CD MP, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. We also have with us the Honorable Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, MP, Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Ambassador Marianne Van Steen, Head of the European Union Delegation, the Most Honorable Mrs. Juliet Holness, MP, Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Senator Donna Scott Motley, Deputy Leader of Opposition Business in the Senate and Opposition Spokesperson for Justice and Gender. And we have with us Professor Opal Palmer Adisa, University Director, the Institute of Gender and Development Studies, University of the West Indies, Mona. March 8, International Women's Day, is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. This day also marks a call to action for gender parity. In Jamaica, we have made many advancements for women and girls. International development partners like the European Union and the United Nations continue to make contributions to advance gender equality. One major project has been the Spotlight Initiative. The Spotlight Initiative is the world's largest targeted effort to end violence against women and girls. Funded by the EU and implemented by the United Nations, Spotlight brings together the UN, government, civil society, and other stakeholders to address violence against women and girls. A historic 18 women were elected members of parliament and 8 women senators were appointed at the end of the 2020 general elections in Jamaica. We celebrate that because it is a big achievement. Some of these women are with us today. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we will deliberate on how greater participation of women in leadership positions can help to secure gender equality and a better world for all. We will hear women currently in leadership positions share how they see their role in advancing gender equality and ending violence against women and girls. We aim to elicit political support and commitment from parliamentarians for the Spotlight Initiative and other interventions to address family violence in keeping with Sustainable Development Goal 5, which is about gender equality. Importantly as well, we will discuss the issue of gender-based violence in Jamaica, the impact of COVID-19 on gender-based violence, hear perspectives on challenges faced by women in leadership positions in engaging on this issue, and try to concretize actions to end violence against women and girls. Today's hybrid activity will respect the COVID-19 protocols. Some of our presenters will be remote. We have only a small number on location with me. And that is for important discussions that we will have. And I can tell you that even here, the protocols are being well respected. Our safety is important. Jamaica's safety is important. Ladies and gentlemen, as you observe the protocols at home, at work, wherever you are tuning in, we invite you to share your feedback and questions in the comment boxes, and we just might choose to share your commentary with our esteemed guests and panelists. How do you share? Use our hashtag, Generation Equality. Hashtag Generation Equality. And of course, because we're celebrating globally, also use hashtag IWD 2021. Connect with us via the GIS Facebook page, which is where we're streaming, and you can also tune in and connect via at UN Jamaica and at EU in Jamaica, because we want to hear from you. You are a part of this conversation. To start us off, and to formally welcome us is country representative of UNICEF Jamaica, Mariko Kagoshima, speaking on behalf of United Nations Resident Coordinator Gary Koni. Mariko has over 20 years' experience in the UN systems. She has served as the UNICEF Deputy Representative in Honduras and Guatemala and was responsible for the overall management of UNICEF's programs. From August 2016, she also served as Officer in Charge for UNICEF Guatemala office for 1 year. Prior to that, Ms. Kagashima worked in UNICEF Uganda as Chief Field Officer to lead the UNICEF post-emergency operations and provided oversight to the UNICEF-led emergency clusters. She also served in Angola as UNICEF Resident Project Officer, Afghanistan and Mexico as UNICEF Program Officer in Education. Her expertise not only covers program areas, but also emergency and humanitarian responses. Ms. Kagashima attended the University of Warwick, Coventry in the United Kingdom, where she obtained a master's degree with distinction in International Comparative Studies and a BA in Letters at Doshisha University, Kyoto, Japan in 1989. Ms. Kagashima is a national of Japan. Thank you, Mariko, and let's make her welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Swaby, moderator. Senator, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, both the Honorable Olivia Grange, CD, MP, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, both joining us virtually. The Honorable Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, MP, Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. My counterpart at the European Union and partner in the fight for gender equality and the end to violence against women and girls, Ambassador Marianne Bernstein. The Most Honorable Mrs. Juliet Holness, MP, Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives. Senator Donna Scott Motley, Deputy Leader of Opposition Business in the Senate and Opposition Spokesperson for Justice and Gender. Professor Opal Parma Adisa, University Director, Institute of Gender and Development Studies, University of West Indies. Partners in civil society, academia, member of press. First, I bring apologies on behalf of UN Resident Coordinator, Dr. Gary Conneal, who could not be here today. I know he would much rather be here, but has been called away unexpectedly. He sends his sincere regards. I bring you greetings on behalf of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the United Nations country team here in Jamaica. This year, the theme for International Women's Day is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. Around the world, the UN is celebrating the tremendous efforts by women and girls in shaping a more equal future and supporting the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Here in Jamaica, in partnership with the European Union and under the banner of Spotlight Initiative, we are recognizing the gains made by the Jamaican women in government. We are also providing a platform for these leaders to declare their practical efforts to leverage their political agency to protect and create space for more young women and girls to be leaders themselves. In this regard, I want to commend the men and women of Parliament who you will hear from later today. These politicians are a few of many who have answered this call to action and are calling us to also play our part. This engagement comes on the heels of the election of appointment of an historic 26 women parliamentarians following the September 2020 general election in Jamaica. And so today, we will celebrate this step forward gender parity in government. we will deliberate on how to foster and increase participation of women in leadership positions across industries of our society. We will also hear how these leaders plan to put a brighter spotlight on ending family violence, especially violence against women and girls in Jamaica. These objectives are especially important because even while we recognize these gains, we hold today's event at a time when 1 in every 5 Jamaican women report that they were sexually abused as children. 2 out of 10 girls aged 15 to 19 think it is okay for a husband or partner to hit his spouse. 1 in 4 women have experienced sexual abuse, and young women under 18 years old of age make up 56% of all reported rape cases in Jamaica. 56%. In 2017, this small country had the second highest rate of female homicide in the world. These alarming statistics have only been made worse by the Covid-19 pandemic. There has been a 30% increase in reports of violence against women worldwide. In Jamaica, more than 700 new reports of abuse came to the Victim Support Unit in March to April last year. In addition, women have paid a greater price of job losses due to COVID-19. Disrupted schooling and work from home have had the unintended negative effect of fueling domestic violence and exploitation. Still, in this time of uncertainty and unprecedented challenges, and even while being most impacted, women, Jamaican women, continue to lead on the front lines of the pandemic response. Women make up a large percentage of the essential workers. Health workers like Jamaican-born nurse Sandra Lindsay have committed to keeping people alive and holding economies, communities, and families together by inspiring vaccination uptake around the world. Women are among the leaders, like Chief Medical Officer Jacqueline Visasor-Mackenzie, supporting efforts to keep prevalence rate lower and Jamaica on track for recovery. Women are teachers like Taneka McCoy Phipps, amid prolonged school closures, are developing innovative strategies like community blackboards to keep children's education going. Women are community aid workers like Stacey Ann Stone of Eve for Life in St. Anne, who, despite COVID-19 and with Spotlight support, continue to provide virtual psychosocial support to young survivors of gender-based violence. This year's International Women's Day highlights the transformative impact of women's participation. We are seeing it ourselves at the United Nations, where I am very proud that we have achieved gender parity in UN leadership posts for the first time in history. The evidence is clear. When women lead in government, we see bigger investment in social protection and greater inroads against poverty. In her message today, UN Women Executive Director declares, and then I quote, "No country prospers without the engagement of women. We need women's representation that reflects all women and girls in all their diversity and abilities, and across all cultural, social, economic, and political situations." I commend Jamaica for the inroads it has made. May International Women's Day remind all of us that we cannot become complacent in the fight for justice and gender equality. There is more for us to do, and women and girls should not have to wait. You see, when women and girls are empowered and live free of violence and discrimination, we can take greater steps to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, as well as Jamaica's Vision 2030. In this regard, I call on all Jamaicans, especially those in position of power, to take bold, decisive action across government, boardrooms, classrooms, institutions, and communities to bring women into decision-making spaces in large numbers and as full partners, so that we can make immediate and greater progress towards an equitable and inclusive world. Happy International Women's Day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariko. Important reminder from Mariko's message. When women lead in government, we see greater investment in social protection and make inroads in addressing poverty. And that's why we have the women leaders with us, because there's the expectation that they are going to bring so much more for women and girls, and they have already started. Mariko, you shared with us some alarming statistics as well, and a reminder that International Women's Day is not just about celebrating our achievements, but a call to action. We indeed have more work to do. But, like you, let me take a moment to salute our women healthcare workers and our other essential service workers. Women, thank you for showing up for us during this pandemic in the way you have. On International Women's Day 2021, we salute you and we thank you for your service. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now hear a few words of greetings from Her Excellency Marianne Van Steen, Ambassador of the European Union and Head of the European Union Delegation to Jamaica. Prior to Jamaica, Ambassador Van Steen completed a successful 4-year term as EU Ambassador to Ecuador. Before her posting as Ambassador to the European Union to Ecuador, she served as Deputy Head of the Human Resources Division in the European External Action Service, Deputy Head of Mission in Peru, and Deputy Head of the unit at the European Commission in charge of Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Venezuela. Marianne Van Steen is Belgian and has over 25 years of experience working in diplomacy and international development with the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Ambassador Marianne Van Steen.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me and a real honor to share the stage on this International Women's Day with a number of powerful Jamaican women. Women that are clearing a path in positions of leadership and are showing the way. Senator Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Honorable Olivia Grange, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. Honorable Juliet Kubert-Flynn, Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Most Honorable Juliet Holness, Member of Parliament and Deputy Speaker of the House. Senator Donna Scott Motley, Deputy Leader of Opposition Business in the Senate, Spokesperson for Justice and Gender. Professor Opal Palmer, Adisa, Director of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies at the University of the West Indies. Dear parliamentarians serving Jamaica, dear representatives of the United Nations, dear Kamisha Swaby, our moderator today, representatives of the media, dear all, few present here and many joining us virtually, I wish you a very good morning on a beautiful International Women's Day. Even if every day should be a Women's Day, I'm very pleased that we have one internationally recognized Women's Day on the 8th of March, because it's an opportunity to celebrate all that women have achieved over time. And it's an opportunity to reflect why women, unfortunately, still do not seem to enjoy the same rights as men, and why many of them still need protection. When we acknowledge and highlight the strides that so many successful women all over the world have made on numerous fronts, we say women who are or have been leading in their respective fields, often defying stereotypes and societal expectations. They have or are showing the way, like you, Jamaican women leaders participating in this event today. You are excelling, probably more than man, not because you're women and not because women are better than men, but because to be where you are and to do what you do, you may have needed to be better or to be more hardworking than man. That is, unfortunately, a fact. So unfortunately, you are still very exceptional. Unfortunately, there are still too many structural, cultural, and other barriers that stand in the way for many women to realize their full potential. And it's painful to note that the promising trend in the second half of the 20th century does not seem to continue in the 21st century. Many signs are worrying. The road towards equal opportunities is still long. The European Union is a strong believer in equal opportunities, equal treatment, equal pay for equal performance. For example, we are addressing the gender pay gap. We want women in jobs that are traditionally thought to be for men, and we want men in more female-like professions. This is not merely about social justice. This is also because we know that we can do better if we do things together. It's about being smart and wanting to reach the best for the entire society. From a more negative angle, we are deeply concerned about the continued and in some places of the world increasing levels of gender-based violence. Gender-based violence which is disproportionately affecting women. That is also, unfortunately, a fact. And that is why the European Union and the United Nations are under the Global Spotlight Initiative, working intensely with governments and with civil society to keep women and girls safe, also here in Jamaica. The success of our fight to reach equal opportunities and to eliminate gender-based violence depends on many factors. But today, we want to come forward stressing one of those factors: the importance of women leaders in this upward battle. Women leaders can make a difference, not because they're better, but because they do and they see things differently. Let me commend Jamaica for being among the countries in the world that has one of the highest percentage of women in parliament. 31%, 26 women. This is up by 70% compared with 2015. This is better than the percentage we have in parliaments in Europe. This is excellent and this is promising. If only time would allow, we wanted to give a voice during this event to all of them, to tell us how they think they can make a difference, because they are an inspiration to all of us, and they deserve our recognition. But instead, we had to be pragmatic, and we have chosen a selection, both in the panel and for the videos with testimonies you will see later. And we also asked 2 men, members of parliament, because their voice on this topic is surely and equally of great importance. Today, we will hear how they plan to use their privileged position to advance gender equality and end gender-based violence. They are the voices and the doers, and I truly believe that they can make a difference. But before the panel discussions and the video testimonies, I'm also very glad to pass the floor to 2 very particular women, not only members of parliament, but also honorable ministers who are honoring us with their virtual presence here today. Minister Johnson-Smith, Minister Grange, thank you for being here with us today, and thank you for your known commitment to a cause which is undeniably one that the European Union, the United Nations, and Jamaica share. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to learning from you.
Thank you, Ambassador Van Steen. We hear again that important call to action because we have made progress, but we can't stop until we create a better Jamaica for all women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm still encouraging you to tweet us. Let us know you are with us in celebrating and in calling to action. So remember, the hashtags are Generation Equality and hashtag IWD 2021. Tweet us at the UN Jamaica page or the EU in Jamaica page. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we now invite the Honourable Olivia Grange, MPCD, the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, for remarks. Minister Grange has been the Member of Parliament for St. Catharines Central since 1997. She was appointed Minister of Information, Youth, Sports and Culture with responsibility for women and gender affairs, entertainment, community development and special projects in 2007. In 2015, Ms. Grange was awarded the Order of Distinction in the rank of Commander for her contribution to the Jamaican music industry, cultural development, and public service. Minister Grange has a long career as a community activist and politician committed to the promotion of youth and women's affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, Minister Olivia Grange.
Thank you so much. Happy International Women's Day. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Minister, we can hear you.
Great. The Most Honorable Gillette Holness, Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Senator, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Her Excellency Mariana Van Steen, Ambassador, Delegation of the EU in Jamaica, Ms. Mariko Kagoshima, UNICEF representative in Jamaica and representing Dr. Gary Conwell, UN resident coordinator in Jamaica. Honorable Gillette Cuthbert-Flynn, Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Senator Donna Scott Motley, Deputy Leader of Opposition Business in the Senate and spokesperson for Gender and Justice. Professor Opal Palmer Adisa, Madam Chairperson, and my salutations could go on. I just want to say, my sisters, happy International Women's Day. This morning, I extend special greetings to the local and international women leaders among us and to all women and girls worldwide as we celebrate International Women's Day 2021 under the theme Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. This annual celebration prompts us to focus on gender equality, national liberation, democracy, peace, and progress worldwide, while intensifying our efforts to overcome the challenges women and girls face in achieving these. What have we accomplished so far? Critical to achieving higher levels of prosperity is continued and accelerated progress towards gender equality. Yes, there is much more for us to accomplish in leadership, but we as women have come a long way. 2020 was a very historic year for women in Jamaican politics, with a record of 28.57% or 18 women being elected members of parliament, along with 38% or 8 female senators sworn into the upper house, an achievement we can always celebrate. What more needs to be done? Since the onset of COVID-19, we have seen women on the front lines as healthcare workers, caregivers, community organizers, and innovators. However, in addition to highlighting the achievements and important contribution of women to society, the pandemic has shown or has caused inequalities, particularly when it comes to women. Many women have lost jobs or have had to leave employment to care for children or the elderly. And violence is still a horrific reality for some of them. Women and girls, families, and communities in our country continue to experience the effects, and communities in our country continue to experience the effects and consequences of gender-based violence. But if we continue to work together, we can eliminate the violence and enable all women to live their best lives. Here, I want to pause to thank the European Union and the United Nations for our continued partnership for change through the Spotlight Initiative as we work together to end the violence. How can we make a difference? There is no doubt that anywhere the situation of women improves, the overall economic condition also improves. Society benefits when women realize their full potential and are able to participate in political and leadership processes. Leaders are now faced with a new reality, a COVID-19 world. As Minister with responsibility for gender affairs, I've taken a gender transformative leadership approach, allowing for the conceptualization and implementation of transparent, equitable, and gender-sensitive initiatives and projects. This ensures that emphasis is placed on the needs of the most vulnerable, with specific focus on women and girls, the elderly, persons with disabilities, rural women, and the working poor. And among the poor, women are especially vulnerable. They are more likely to be the poorest of the poor, with access to fewer income earning opportunities. In building back stronger, we must all put greater focus on creating real gender equality. Women and girls are innovative and dynamic leaders, and it is important for them to be empowered to play their part as agents of change in the fight against COVID-19. Investing in our women and girls is an investment for the future. I remain steadfast in advancing women's rights, increasing women's leadership and political participation, strengthening women's economic power, including women in our recovery efforts, and eliminating gender-based violence against women and girls. I want to commend the Bureau of Gender Affairs and all our partners on celebrating, empowering, and rewarding our Jamaican women and girls, as well as all organizations that continue to work towards the inclusion of Jamaican women and girls in national development. Today, as we celebrate women in leadership everywhere, let us commit to accelerate our actions towards achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world, particularly in enabling women to achieve economic independence, which is so very critical to us building back stronger. I wish you all a wonderful, happy International Women's Day. God bless, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Minister Grange. And of course, in true Minister Grange style, she had to be in the royal purple to celebrate International Women's Day. Thank you for your commitment and your service to the women of Jamaica. Thank you for reflecting on a COVID-19 Jamaica and ensuring that in your capacity, you're adding that gender lens so we can consider really and truly how this pandemic impacts women differently and what we all need to do to play our part in creating a better world, a better Jamaica for women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, to close this portion of the event, we invite Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith to bring remarks. She has been an attorney at law for close to 20 years, having worked both in private practice and as corporate in-house counsel. On March 7, 2016, she was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of Jamaica, the first woman to hold the post and the first to be born after her country's independence. Senator Johnson Smith was concurrently appointed Leader of Government Business in the Senate and Chair of various Senate committees. A government senator between 2009 and 2012, and opposition senator between 2012 and 2016, this is Minister Johnson Smith's third appointment as a senator. Senator Johnson Smith, welcome and good morning.
Madam Moderator, Excellencies, my sisters, panelists, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and happy International Women's Day. It is an honor and a pleasure to participate in this important event. IWD is the most special day of the year for celebrating women's achievements and for raising awareness about the global and national fight for equality. I say most special because, of course, every day should be a celebration of women and womanhood, and our quest for equality, it certainly marches on every day. This year's global IWD mantra, Choose to Challenge, invites us all individually, women and men, to be responsible for our personal thoughts and actions and dares us to translate them into urgent collective action. I think we can all agree that despite the gains we've made in many areas, and that Jamaica, of course, has very much of which to be proud, there are still glaring disparities. And there is no doubt that urgent action is still needed to not only secure equality, but in many cases, also even the basic safety, education, and well-being of women. This need for action is even more urgent as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the focus on leadership is more than relevant. In seeking to build back stronger, better, and more resilient, governments worldwide must consider that this is a golden opportunity to ensure that women are appropriately placed both as contributors to and beneficiaries of these processes. This will require us to lead and will require us to choose to challenge. The quest to support women's equality in the rebuilding of our communities and countries can be facilitated by the involvement of women already in positions of leadership, be it diplomacy, business, academia, the health sector, or in politics. In these capacities, we must choose to challenge by using our platforms for the exchange of ideas and information, for advocacy, and for instigating and leading on appropriate actions. In light of our numbers today, I know we've all been hearing, it would be remiss of me to not include our most basic responsibilities as leaders in this COVID pandemic. The sharing of facts in a world of disinformation, encouraging wearing of masks and the adherence of protocols, including discouraging social gatherings and promoting work from home where possible until there is further reduction and stability. And I want to associate myself with the salute issued by our moderator this morning and my own deep thanks to our women healthcare workers for all that they do at every level to keep us safe and well. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I take very seriously my opportunities to focus on women's issues regarding COVID-19 through my participation in international meetings and fora. I was particularly pleased to participate in 2 virtual meetings of female foreign ministers last year, namely COVID-19 and Women, Avenues for Action, and COVID-19 and Women, Women's Role in Economic Recovery. Tomorrow, I'll speak at the 3rd International Women's Forum in Bogota, Colombia, virtually, of course, under the COVIDian theme, Empowered Women, the Key to Economic Reactivation. So Minister Grange's point about the need for economic independence and economic empowerment is recognized globally as well, and I am trying to do my part. These meetings not only highlight the importance of how international and regional organizations work together to achieve gender equality, but also seek to ensure that there is coherent and concerted gender-based guidance for COVID-19 responses. Our work to secure growth and development in a COVID context requires that women at all levels of society and the economy be involved in decision-making. The integration of more women in positions of leadership and power not only corrects gender inequality and imbalance, but diversity improves collective decision-making and therefore better equips us as a world to tackle major crises, especially where women are disproportionately impacted as they are with this pandemic. It's acknowledged, for example, that women comprise the majority of frontline COVID-19 response teams worldwide. UN Women reports that 70% of the global healthcare workforce are women, yet we make up only 30% of that leadership. As stated in the UN Secretary General's policy brief of April last year, COVID-19 infections among healthcare workers affected more women than men. Gender balance in the global COVID response is not solely a women's issue. It is a societal and an economic one. Women have been hardest hit by the displacement and economic shocks resulting from the health crisis. UN Women indicates that 40% of all employed women, representing 510 million women globally, work in the hardest hit industries, compared with 36% of all employed men. In addition, it has revealed that 72% of all domestic workers, 80% of whom are women, have lost their jobs during the pandemic. And none of us present today need the figures to recognize that the burden of unpaid care and domestic work has increased exponentially as balanced with work from home. Among the actions which we must take in our post-COVID reconstruction is the strengthening of childcare and social support, prioritization of women-owned businesses for access to credit, capacity building and market support in order to create or restore economic independence as relevant. And it's good that we can recall that in April last year, 60.15% of Jamaica's care program was distributed to women. The approach, like the pandemic, has been unprecedented. Our continued work under the Spotlight Initiative to address the issue of violence is an important complement to all other social and economic endeavors. And I join with Minister Grange in thanking the EU and the UN for this important initiative. There is no question, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, that increasing women's leadership and ensuring a gendered lens to the global COVID-19 response and the recovery of our economies will contribute to bringing about a more equitable future. Choosing to challenge means we all have a part to play. Mentorship offered by and to women who lead and who position themselves to assume new opportunities is critical. The positive projection of images of women in positions of power, working in unconventional fields, and of women and men sharing equal responsibility for domestic labor can also have a positive impact on how women feel and are viewed, as well as broaden economic, social, and domestic dynamics. From challenge comes change. I am confident that individually and collectively, if as a part of leadership, we choose to challenge, we will make a difference in the fight for women's rights and justice. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for inviting me to share in this wonderful morning.
Thank you. Am I good? Thank you, Senator Johnson-Smith. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, Senator's point about working from home in a pandemic, I can relate to, because I have a 6-month-old and I'm working from home in a pandemic. Women, you are amazing and strong, and you know, we shouldn't really be asked to manage every single thing while being amazing at our jobs and being amazing mothers and so many other roles, whether wives, partners, and all the other things we do, not just for home, but for community. But you know what? Today, while we do think of all the work we have to do, and this is not just work for our homes, but for our country, to create a better future for all women and girls, take a moment today. If all you have is 2 minutes, sit, reflect on how you have weathered a pandemic. You are still here, still strong, and perhaps even more amazing than when you started out. So we still celebrate you and remind you to celebrate International Women's Day. If you are joining us online, please remember to use the hashtags IWD 2021 as well as hashtag Generation Equality. Additionally, please tweet us at UN Jamaica and at EU in Jamaica to be a part of the conversation. You will want to be a part of the conversation, as it's now time for us to introduce our panel. In recognition of this achievement of International Women's Day, whose theme this year is Women in Leadership, the EU and the UN, under the Spotlight Initiative, sought to engage women parliamentarians and a few of the men parliamentarians as well for reflection on their role in advancing gender equality and ending violence against women and girls. Joining us today are four accomplished women leaders making their mark in politics and academia and supporting the advancement of women in Jamaica. They are Senator Donna Scott Motley, Honorable Minister Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, the Most Honorable Juliet Holness, and Professor Opal Palmer Adisa. Throughout the discussion, recorded statements from other parliamentarians will be shared to allow us to reflect on the role of women in leadership and in driving recovery in a post-COVID-19 world. Let me tell you a little bit about each of our panelists so you get to meet them, share with them this morning. The Honorable Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, MP, Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. The Honorable Juliet Cuthbert Flynn is the Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness with responsibility for maternal health, HIV prevention, and the reduction of drug abuse. She has been a tireless campaigner for women's reproductive health rights. Minister Cuthbert Flynn is also a two-time Member of Parliament for West Rural St. Andrew, double Olympic medalist and businesswoman. See how many hats? In 1992, she was conferred with the Order of Distinction for her contribution to sports. Welcome, Minister Juliet Cuthbert Flynn.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's now meet the Most Honorable Juliet Holness, MP, Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives. She's a member of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, was a senior manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers for a number of years. She was elected Member of Parliament in 2016 for East Rural St. Andrew, where she retained the seat in the September 3, 2020 general elections and was appointed Deputy Speaker of the House. Among the issues which constantly occupy her mind, in addition to the welfare of her family, are matters concerning community development, gender equality, and disenfranchised youth. These have allowed her to form the charitable foundations, Juliet Holness Foundation, and the Save Our Boys and Girls Foundation. Mrs. Holness has been married for almost 20 years to the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica. They have two sons, Adam and Matthew. Mrs. Holness, good morning.
Good morning. Pleasure.
Senator Donna Scott Motley is Deputy Leader of Opposition Business in the Senate and the Opposition Spokesperson on Gender and Justice. She is the founding partner of the Scott Buhar Singh and Bonnick Law. Over the years, she has served in varying roles in the Senate. She has also chaired and served on a number of high-level public and private sector boards. In 2007, Senator Donna Scott Motley was awarded the Musgrave Medal for Distinguished Service to the Development of Culture through Legal Skills. Good morning, Senator. And rounding out our panel is Professor Opal Palmer Adisa. She's University Director of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, Regional Coordinating Officer at the University of the West Indies, Mona Campus. She's a culture and gender activist, poet, and novelist. Professor Palmer Adisa is author of over 20 single publications, which includes novels, short stories, and essays, and she has been anthologized in over 400 publications. Professor Palmer Adisa is currently leading the EU-UN Jamaica Spotlight Country Project, which has a keen focus on bolstering the legislative framework to protect women and girls. Professor Palmer Adisa, good morning. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you want to hear from our panelists. So let me invite them to bring a few words of introduction and their reflection. Minister Cuthbert Flynn, we'll begin with you.
I thank you so much. It is really a pleasure to be here this morning on International Women's Day. My fellow panelists and moderator, good morning to you all, and good morning to these amazing women on International Women's Day. I am really pleased to be among such an esteemed group of women and even more delighted to participate in this meaningful and timely discussion around women leadership in the face of this global pandemic. I can proudly say that women continue to significantly have a leadership role in key areas of the society, even as the world grapples with the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that it has made and continue to make in every area of our lives. From a health perspective, I dare to say women have impacted more negatively by COVID-19 when compared to their male counterpart. In Jamaica, more female have directly impacted by COVID-19, with over 14,000 females contracting the disease, accounting for over 55% of the case count for the island. Not only has COVID impacted women's health, females have endured increased domestic violence in lockdowns with abusive spouse and have endured the most job losses since March. Further to that, an Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB study, suggests that females, particularly those in rural areas, have been holding the fort. Yes, they have. I am from a constituency, a rural constituency, and I see that. Outmanning their male counterparts in chores and evolving parental duties since the COVID-19 pandemic hit. According to the IDB, that canvassed 2,596 Jamaicans online over 2 weeks, 72% of women reported being responsible for coordinating or assisting children with homeschooling. You know about that. Well, not yet.
Early years.
Early years. 67.8% handled cleaning duties. 59.7% had cooking duties. And 61.8% were caring for adults. Not only were women working from home and managing their affairs at home, thousands of women were still and are still on the front line fulfilling their duty of care in hospitals and being essential workers. Martin Luther King once said that the ultimate measure of a man, and in this case, women, is not the moments of comfort, of convenience, but where she stands in moments of challenges and controversy. Our women are doing just that, standing up and showing out, but the work for an equal place at the table still continues. I must hasten to say that as we endure the impact of this pandemic, it has not shifted the important role that women play in society. One success story on a national level has come even as we are one of the greatest global public health challenge. I am proud to be elected once again amongst the history-making number of women who were elected to represent people of this great nation, to be the voice, especially for the vulnerable population. If we are to achieve true equality, then legislation, policies are needed to support action. These actions are brought to life through targeted mechanism and programs. It's important we are not only part of the history, but use this as a stepping stone to create history. We have the unique opportunity to influence change in society that will see our women given equal opportunity and treatment. And I thank you so much for having me here to be a part of this panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Minister Cuthbert Flynn. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now hear from the Most Honorable Juliet Holness.
Gentlemen, it is my pleasure to be here today on International Women's Day. And let me first take the opportunity to big up all my sisters here in Jamaica and those abroad. It is once again our day. It shouldn't be just our day one day, but every single day of the year. Big up to all my sisters. I come to the discussion today as a member of Parliament, as Deputy Speaker in the House, as wife of the Prime Minister. Yes, wearing many hats. Before this, I was wife and mother, and very happy at it. Successful in business, and I must say, at the time, always in my husband's shadows. When I decided, and I must say I decided as a woman to make the decision to enter representational politics, my husband supported me. He was happy to see me getting involved and becoming a part of changing the game and changing history. I remember at the time, in 2016, the constituency I took, a rural constituency, East Rural St. Andrew, was probably one of the most challenging seats to win. very marginal seat, and one we needed to wrestle away from the opposition. Yes. It was a pleasure as a female to be a part of changing history, winning by that one seat. Many can argue which one seat won the election, but I'll keep believing as a female I had an opportunity to really, really make a difference and to become a part of the process of governance. I must say, for me looking back as the party leader's wife, it was a very different thing to see happening. Most traditionally, we would find our leaders of government having their wives performing a ceremonial role. And for the first time, you saw a party leader's wife, then opposition leader's wife, stepping in and deciding to become actively involved physically in the political landscape. It was a pleasure for me to see that my husband was one of those men who understood the partnership that was required of women, because without that support, I probably would not have been able to contribute in the way that I do even today. And I believe it was the start of something great, because 4.5 years later, we were able to make history in terms of the number of women that actually ran for seats. I think about 26 women for the first time, and 18 of us entered representational politics. Many of us, as women in representational politics, have actually raised the bar. Yes, we have revolutionized the quality of representation that many Jamaican people have grown accustomed to. We have brought our skills, our passion, our own perspective, and our emotional intelligence to the lives of our people. This, in my estimation, is our platform, and yes, it is our advantage. So we should use it not to compete, but to complete. As sisters, together, we need to use every opportunity to protect, promote, and to empower our girls and educate and re-socialize our boys so that Jamaica can benefit from the full partnership of having women actively involved in the political process, in business, in leadership. Because it is only in having this true partnership that Jamaica is the best place in which we can live. It is my responsibility, and I take it personally, to consider myself as a living example of the possibilities of what our Jamaican young girls can become. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Holness. I like that point about using the opportunity, the platform of being a woman in leadership, not to compete, but to complete. And I will just try to extend the statement a little and say that as women leaders, I think you should play an important role in completing the work of achieving gender equality, gender parity, and ending gender-based violence. All right, thank you so much. Senator Donna Scott Motley, let us hear from you.
It's such a pleasure to be here this morning, and I want to especially thank the European Union and the United Nations for having conceptualized this morning. It's very interesting that we are here as women leaders, and yet we have so much in common. The Most Honorable Juliet Holness, my Member of Parliament, town was quite challenging, and I expressed all my concerns to her. She was very receptive. The Honorable Juliet Cuthbert Flynn has something to do with me way back when she was actually, I attended her gym, and so she actually trained me. There is presently no evidence of that, but not to happen.
You look fabulous.
As I call her when I'm not in her presence, is one of those women in academia whom I deeply admire. She belongs to a very elite group of the society, female professors. And so, on International Women's Day, we come together here, women on different sides of the arena, a woman from academia, an extremely talented and competent moderator. But we have some things in common. The things we have in common are more than the things that divide us.
Yes.
In going forward, today we reflect on all of our achievements, but we come together to project what it is that we need to do and where we need to go as women. And as Juliet Horner said, there are many things which we have to complete without competition. When women lead, they bring a different quality to leadership. In fact, one of my favorite quotes is that from Justice Ruth Ginsburg, who said, "Women belong in a space where all decisions are being made." And that is what has happened in Jamaica. In many arenas, we have dominated judiciary for a long time. We have made our mark in the medical profession, in the engineering profession. We have women who are pilots, and so on. But for the first time in our history, we have 26 women in the political space. And that is something which we have to celebrate. I will tell you that although I'm in the Senate, I have the deepest admiration for women who are actually in representative politics, because I have run as a candidate and I know what that entails. And I know the tremendous sacrifices which they have to make, the separation from their families, the way in which they have to manage on so many different fronts. And for this reason, I salute them. But it's important that they're there, because as I said previously, women in leadership bring a different kind of emphasis. Let me just briefly say that in this COVID pandemic, globally, it is the women leaders who are being celebrated. They have led with compassion, they have led with care, but they have also been very decisive about the steps that they have to take to protect their people. And so the examples are given of New Zealand, of Taiwan, of Germany, of Norway, of Denmark, and of course, I have to add, Barbados. There was a time when the qualities that women demonstrated were considered quite frivolous, and people looked to men because they were strong and commanding and sometimes even combative. But the world has shifted considerably, and women now are coming forward as nurturers, building an economy that seeks to build and empower people, different approaches to the social problems and the inequity which we face. And so the women in the political space can use their influence to ensure not only gender equality for women, but equality for all. Let me give you one simple example. We are now having a joint select committee on the Sexual Harassment Act. And as we have discussed it as women, it has evolved way beyond which was contemplated, which was to stop sexual harassment in the workplace. Indeed, it has now become the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act because we have come together. Moderator, if you allow me, I will take all the time. So let me just thank you and wish all of you happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Senator Scott Motley. Wow. And I love that idea of us all connected. Very, very important. Professor Opal Palmer-Deesa,
To the elite group of a small number of women professors in Jamaica. Let us hear from you.
Thank you, and happy International Women's Day to my esteemed panelists, but really to all women and to all people. And I want to begin by really just acknowledging my mother, who for me is the first example of leadership. And to me, there are three important qualities of a leader, and my mother exemplified all of those. A leader is someone who genuinely loves and respects people, and my mother did that. A leader is someone who has a vision for the future and is willing to work in a community in order for that vision to happen. And a leader is someone who really has the ability to communicate clearly with different people. And so today, when we talk about leadership, you know, we're talking about, and we're seeing all of us here, I want to acknowledge the activists on the ground. I want to acknowledge those women who, and girls, because there are lots of young girls who have worked in movements, who are continuously leading by example. And yes, I want to acknowledge the important work that some of our women leaders have done in the Caribbean and are doing. Certainly we want to acknowledge the President of Trinidad and Tobago, Paula Mae Weeks, and the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, and of course the Prime Minister of Aruba, the Honorable Evelyn Weaver Crowes. Because in what we've seen is that they have provided during the COVID-19 the lowest rates in the American region. And this is also exemplified in Jamaica, where we have women in this talk. We talk about the women who are leading in teaching, in the community blackboards, in medicine. So when we look at leadership, we want to look at leadership with this very broad lens. And we want to make sure we include all the women who are leading. If for International Women's Day, and as we celebrate leadership in achieving an equal future in COVID-19 world, the efforts of women and girls throughout the world in shaping our equal future and recovery from the pandemic. Now more than ever, in this period of uncertainty, economic disparity, and rising crime rates, we need leadership that manifests feminist principles of inclusivity, diversity, and community rejuvenation. So we talk about coming together, and that is an important aspect of it. But when we're talking about leadership and what is the leadership we need to address the issue of gender-based violence, what is the leadership we need to address the issue of poverty, what is the leadership we need to address the issue of self-esteem that many women and girls are faced with? Well, that's a leadership that is inclusive, that's a leadership that's diverse, that's a leadership that is nurturing, that seeks to understand who each individual is and to shape that individual to stand and to be a collective leader. What we need as we talk about leadership, we really need to look at how do we empower each community to lead. And so I want to take this time to acknowledge the activists, the work that the Institute for Gender is doing in Trinidad, in Barbados, in Jamaica, the work that all of the activists are doing in these various community organizations daily working to help women and girls who are victims. I want to acknowledge the leadership that's happening in terms of bringing to our consciousness femicide and the need to reduce that. And I also want us to understand that in order for us to transform any society, and Jamaica is no different, is that we are going to have to build leadership on all levels. And we need to really come together and work and understand that whatever problems, social problems we're faced with, it is not just a girl and woman's issue, it is a society issue. And what we need to do is to build a leadership that is sensitive and compassionate, and a leadership that understands that the future is in all of our hands. So I want to wish you again, happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Professor Opal Palmer-Diso. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've gotten such a great start. And as we reflect on the strides Jamaica has taken to advance women's rights, we invited a few of our esteemed parliamentarians, including some of whom recently joined political life, to reflect on the role of women in leadership and to say what they would do to continue and promote women's advancement in Jamaica. Let's hear from Member of Parliament for Southeast St. Andrew and Opposition Spokesman on Finance, Julian Robinson, and Member of Parliament for East Portland, Anne-Marie Vaz.
I'm Julian Robinson, Member of Parliament for South East St. Andrew and Opposition Spokesman on Finance. To get more women involved in the political process requires very deliberate action. From my part, I believe there needs to be specific quotas in the political parties to have more women participate, and also a special fund that can support more women being involved in the political process. In terms of violence against women, I believe we have to do more to empower women so that they can become independent. I think a big factor that contributes to violence is the dependence of women on men economically. And I think the more independent we have women, the less they're likely to be in positions where they are susceptible to violence.
Continue to bolster efforts for gender-sensitive laws and policies and to promote opportunities for women to gain independence, thereby reducing gender-based violence. COVID-19 has placed women in a more dependent role, and we must increase our efforts in financing causes geared towards their independence. My sisters, dream big. Believe in yourself and never let anyone stand in your way.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to pick up on some of those points because we're going to amp up the discussion now. Yes? My esteemed panel, and you've heard from some of your colleagues, let's talk a little bit about women's leadership some more. What is the significance of the achievement of having 26 women parliamentarians? How significant is this for women and girls in Jamaica? As a person outside the space, Professor Palma Adisa, I'd like you to respond first.
This is a big historical moment for us. And of course, it becomes even bigger when we understand what these women are potentially can do and will do. We have seen leadership in Jamaica rise for a very long time, not only in middle management, but I think women who are now in this space, in this parliamentary space, understand the importance of having a gender budget, understand how things impact women and children, understand that if women don't have the support and infrastructure and the support they need for themselves, particularly because Jamaica has such a high rate of single parenting headed by women, and the data supports that they are the poorest of the land. So women in parliament now has an opportunity to institute a gender budget and to look at the way in which as we move forward, how do we bring about equity? It's a very historical and important moment, and I'm very excited, and I'm also very optimistic because I think there's a group of very bright women who want to change and who want to create a different Jamaica.
Thank you so much, Professor Palma Adisa. Mrs. Holness, let me come over to you. We heard Julian Robinson talk about perhaps having quotas in the political parties and also having a special fund to advance women's candidacy. And I know that's something that you have spoken about. Yes. In addition to that, from media reports and so on, your name always comes up about encouraging and supporting the women in your party in becoming more involved. So can you talk to us about how we really should be advancing the participation of women in public life?
I will say for representational politics, it's always a challenge because it is dependent on your own constituents to vote you into being able to participate in that political process. So for last election, you would have observed us having a significant majority of women, actually as high as 38% in the Senate, and it could still be more. But we fell short of that because it just depends on who is voted in. I'm happy to hear, Julian, and I smiled, indicating that funding a special fund for women makes a difference. Men do support men over the years. It is important for us to decisively put in place a fund so that women who would like to represent are given that opportunity, equal opportunity in terms of the funding they take to being able to secure those votes. However, being a representative, and I have Juliet Cuthbert-Finn here as well, another representative that I've observed, and several of the other women, literally, we have made it our goal to show the representation that females give vis-a-vis our men. We have literally ensured that our constituents talk about us, talk about the quality of representation, talk about the nurturing role we take in literally taking their problems on as our own and traveling with it every single day. So in standing out as being far superior representatives to the people, we are making a case for women to represent more and more in the future. And I'm sure you are going to see the number of female representatives in politics growing as a result of our endeavors.
All right, thank you so much. So that speaks to serving as inspiration. And Professor Adisa, I heard you mention some of the women leaders around the Caribbean. And Senator Scott Motley, you talked about, just how connected the women leaders in Jamaica are. But I'm looking to the future. I'm talking about inspiration. Apart from having the quotas, that proposal in the political parties, and apart from that fund, which we're hearing is extremely important because women getting access to the financial support to step into leadership can be quite difficult, what else can we do to inspire young girls, young women to step up to public life?
That question is for me.
Yes.
Well, I think that it is always very important for them to have role models. And that is what we see in these women here. I think that there should be a process of mentoring. And so the parliamentarians need to engage with young people, and particularly young women, at every level. They have constituencies, and they should organize special events at which they will speak and present an agenda which inspires young women and which highlights the way in which that they can make a contribution. But I want to also add one thing. It is time that women are given safe seats. No.
That's an interesting one.
Safe seats are reserved for special men. I have personally walked the constituencies of both of these women, and I will say frankly, I have the highest admiration for them. Not even donkeys can travail some of the paths that they do, making contact with every voter. So yes, when you see women having safe seats so that you know they don't have to fight so hard to win, that is also an inspiration. And cabinet positions. We do have a number of women in the cabinet, but it's just not enough. If we are committing to quota for women, we need to commit a quota for responsibilities. Even with the committees of parliament, well, Mrs. Holness chairs a powerful one, the Economy and Production Committee. The economy usually being the exclusive purview for men, and she chairs that. But when you look at some of the committees, women are so underrepresented, and they are put on committees which are considered to be committees which deal only with women issues, without recognizing that all issues are women issues.
Thank you so much. Professor Adisa, I think you wanted to respond there.
I really wanted to respond in terms of two ways. One is in terms of how do we build that leadership that you talked about. And certainly one of the things that the Institute is doing is currently we're organizing just that. Starting with young girls in high school, making sure that they have the mentorship, making sure that they understand what leadership means. What are some of the challenges that they face as female leaders, which these esteemed women can provide for them in terms of some of the hurdles that they will have to overcome. And also I think what is so important about this time is the caucus and the consensus building of the women, understanding that they come together as a team, and how then do they get their male counterpart to buy in. So the alliances that are built, but certainly it is the caucus development that the women need to establish and to mentorship, particularly our students who are coming up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that intervention. You know, Senator Scott Motley, in your response, you talked about how oftentimes the women in political leadership, they are asked to or assigned to the roles that are called women's issues. And I think so many of our issues that we label women's issues are just society issues, right? They affect the entire society. However, Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, online, Renz Johns is watching and she's shouting out to one of her favorite leaders, that's you. And she says, I love her bravery for women's reproductive health rights in Jamaica, with lots of exclamation marks, by the way. So, reflecting on what we call women's issues, but also specifically responding to the women's reproductive health rights issues, what drives your advocacy in the face of significant pushback?
Thanks once again. And I think what all the panelists have said is not just women's issue, but it's societal issue. This affects everyone, I think. Reproductive rights affects everyone because it affects our healthcare system. And I think one of the things that we've all spoken about is listening to your constituents, going on the ground, finding out what exactly is happening. And where my drive, I guess, with this issue came from was because something specifically happened that I'm aware of in my constituency. And I thought, as MP Holness said, a lot of women come and they pour their heart and soul out to you at your office. When you have your office days, you can't imagine some of the stories, some of the things that women and men come and they talk about. And so I thought it was important for me to actually bring this issue to the fore and be bold enough. We are first and foremost legislators. We are there to actually make policies, as you mentioned a while ago, that most of the women are not necessarily in the cabinet positions. And that is how you have policy changes. And I think we need to see more women in those positions. But you have to be bold. You are a legislator first. You have to listen to the people. You have to listen to society and look at the issues and speak about them and have that voice. We are here as legislators to really speak for the voiceless.
Thank you. And that remains such an important, almost like a tagline for you, because this is the second time I've heard you say it in this conversation, being a voice for the voiceless. And oftentimes those who are voiceless are women and girls. Thank you. All right, I want to look a little bit about economics, and I want to invite Mrs. Holness, especially because I learned that you chair that committee on economics, and then Professor Palmadisa to respond to this question from I am Suhail Amir. How would we address the cultural issues that form the background to the gender pay gap?
Cultural issues. For Jamaica, I am still of the view that there is, in fact, some level of pay disparity. Women, you may not be happy to hear me say this, but we have a responsibility to fix it as well. When a female comes into my office to negotiate for her salary, she comes in very often in a position where her qualifications and experience is better than her male counterpart who comes in for the same interview. And the process becomes, yes, I believe I can do a very good job. What would you like for your salary? Whatever it pays. And that's the interview. Her male counterpart says, even when he has no clue about the job he is being required to do, oh yes, I can do it. I am very capable. I am going to impress. I can do that job. What's the pay? What's the highest? And that's the difference. So I tell every young lady, when you get up and go there, do not be afraid to be strong. Do not be afraid to be powerful. Do not be afraid to speak up for yourself. Go in there and say, I'm highly qualified, I am capable, I know I can do an excellent job. You give me a chance and you will not turn back. You will be happy that you gave me this opportunity. And we are usually able to show it. So we need to take the reins in our hands in every single opportunity that is granted to us, and do not for any moment be meek and shudder and be submissive about it.
Ourselves.
Yes. Take that challenge. Own the challenge. Tell them you are capable, and you will show that you are. So whenever an opportunity comes, do not feel any way about getting up and going to your manager and saying, look, my salary is not enough. And it is not because I have bills to pay and I have how many children I have to take care of. It is the skills and competence and capability that I bring to this organization, and I should be paid fairly for it. For us as legislators, we will also have to ensure through our Ministry of Labor and Social Security that we do what is necessary to ensure the pay disparity is reduced to zero. So we need to monitor and ensure that persons can come and complain. I have the same job, I have the same responsibility. My predecessor, who was a man, was paid 20% more than me, and I would like that fixed. But we women have a role to play as well.
Thank you so much. So we need as women to perhaps mentor, teach, and ensure that other young women know about the negotiation skills, which are a very important part of wage discussions. Professor Adisa, the same question. It's about addressing the cultural issues which impact the gender pay gap.
Yes. So I would go a step further and say we ought to make it a law that people who are doing the same work get the same pay. So even though Jamaica has the largest percentage of women in middle management, the data suggests that they're still getting 60% of what men in middle management used to get. So that needs to be fixed. The other issue is a much larger issue. Internationally, women oftentimes don't negotiate. What MP Juliet said is that they go in, they accept it. Yes, I can do a good job. But we need to understand that that begins very early in the home and in school, where girls who are told, you know, if they argue or if they debate, that they're being aggressive, that they're not being cooperative, where boys are being encouraged. So traditionally, women don't negotiate. Traditionally, women don't have the aplomb to say, yes, I am good, I am better than the best, and this is what I deserve. So it's a cultural, social, educational, parental issue, so that we need to understand, how are we raising our girls? How are we raising our boys? Are we raising them to be equal? What is it that they need? And again, yes, we women have to be responsible in knowing what our counterparts make and insisting and demanding that we're given that salary.
Minister Cuthbert Flynn, as we close out this part of the discussion, I have to pick up on the point of mentorship that Professor Adisa spoke to a while ago. How do we really achieve that? I mean, where do we start? I know you said it in the womb and so on, but what do we do to equip our girls and young women to be able to boldly stand and get what they're worth?
You know, Kamisha, I totally agree. We have to start somewhere. And I think us as parliamentarians, I think that is where the women, I believe, are stepping up. And yes, I'm going to be biased. I think the women, I was so proud of the few women who set the pace, I believe, in 2016. I think a lot of persons were looking at us and saying, how come you are now doing this in your constituency? I remember having a focus group and sharing something, bringing another woman from the University of the West Indies to come to speak to some youths at Oberlin High School, just to show them, talk about career opportunities, to tell them to be bold, to tell them to stand up, to tell them what they should expect out there. And I think those are some of the things that the women parliamentarians are actually doing. Not that the men are not doing it, but I think those are some of the things that we're quicker to do. And I think one of the things that we have to do is to, after COVID, we must organize more in the constituency as parliamentarians to do more of these empowerment sessions. I had plans to do some this year, but of course, last year, but COVID, of course, ruined that. But I think those are some of the things that we have to do, because I also get that where women come in or people come in and they want a job. So what can you do? Me no know anything. And I have to say, no, this is how you're going to say it. What skills do you have? And if you have no skill, let us try to get you a skill, some sort of a skills training. And I think that is where we're losing the battle, because they don't have that in the home to teach them, to guide them. And at the same time, they look to us for that guidance. And how we must now guide them is with the different skills training that's out there. So when you have a skill, you can say, this is what I'm able to do. I have 1 or 2 or 3 skills. This is what I'm able to do. And then go out and find that. So empowerment, that is where we need to start. It's to empower our girls.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ladies, this was a great discussion and just an important conversation about how we inspire, empower, facilitate our women and girls to get them into leadership as well. We're going to shift gears to, and as a part of doing that, we're going to hear from 2 more parliamentarians about the unique challenges of women in the COVID-19 pandemic and ways their leadership can support women. Audience, please turn your attention to the videos.
It is important that we recognize as a nation that there are no gender-specific roles. It is important that we acknowledge that both men and women have a role to play in the caring and upbringing of children, in the maintenance of the home, and in doing day-to-day chores. Research has shown that the majority of violence against our women and girls take place within the home. Arguments have started because of who hasn't cooked the dinner, who hasn't washed the clothes, who isn't taking care of the baby, who isn't feeding the baby, who isn't cleaning the baby, who isn't cleaning the house. There are no gender-specific roles, and it is time that our men understand that they too have a responsibility to take care of their children and the household. As men, we must also ensure that our sons understand that they must respect their mother, they must respect their sister, they must respect their teachers, they must respect every single woman in their lives. Which therefore means that as men, we must lead by example. We must raise our sons as kings to respect the queens in their lives.
Angela Brownberg, Shadow Minister of Education and Training and a Member of Parliament of Southwest St. Andrew. As we celebrate March 8th, International Women's Day, I want to reflect a little bit on our roles as members of Parliament, as a lawmaker, in ensuring that the laws that we pass in Parliament are laws that protect our women, are laws that help to reduce the harmful gender norms that we have been used to, and are laws that see women and men as partners in development. I also believe that we need to do a lot more in terms of gender statistics. You know, so often we have been asking when data is presented for disaggregated data, so that we're better able to understand what's happening with our women, what's happening with our girls, what's happening with our men, and what does that mean, and therefore what can we do to ensure that we reverse some of the trends that we are seeing. The other is that, you know, I've always believed in conversation, the power of conversation, and I believe that it is important for us to continue to increase the discussion around the gender-based violence. What is that? How does that take place? How can we prevent it? How do we support our women and our girls, our men? How do we support victims? How do we support survivors? Because I believe that it is important that as women, we give support to other women. We give support to civil society as they do the work amongst women, you know, for them to be empowered among our men, because we need them also as allies for this International Women's Day, as we look at gender equality and as we look at COVID, the pandemic, and what that has done. And what we have been seeing is that a number of the gains that we have made are at risk of being reversed. And I believe we all have to step up and make sure that that does not take place. We have seen an increase in gender-based violence. We have seen an increase in mental, emotional abuse, physical abuse. We have even seen that women are losing jobs at a higher rate than men. And we have also seen that women are falling further into poverty, and certainly individuals from low-income families are less likely to rebound from the loss of income during this time, and we have to do something about it. So as we celebrate International Women's Day, and as I wish you a happy International Women's Day, these are still some things that we need to do. I am in.
Thank you so much. Wow, lots for us to start talking about. And I'm just going to go straight to the point that Angela Brownberg raised. And, you know, in even calling about for the data, disaggregated data, Professor Adisa, you knew I was coming to you about this one because you're the academic on the panel. Globally, research has shown that women have been more severely affected than men by the pandemic. Angela Brownberg mentioned what she is seeing in the state of Jamaica, but also the research internationally has been bearing out that more women have lost jobs and seen reduced income, and there have been a greater number of incidents of violence against women and girls. Professor Adisa, what is the picture that the current data paints about the impact of COVID-19 on women and girls in Jamaica?
It is not a very good picture. Certainly, we've seen a tremendous increase in gender-based violence and child abuse, sexually as well as physical. And so that, and I think people don't really understand that this is not just an issue for women and girls. It has far-reaching economic health issues for our entire society. So when a woman is physically abused or sexually abused, when a child is physically abused or sexually abused, it impacts our healthcare system, it impacts our work system. It impacts the entire social strata of the society. It is a societal issue. And what it says to us is that we really need to educate our people and look at some of the cultural norms that need to be eradicated because they're not serving us. And we need to look at re-education. One of the things that the Institute for Gender and Development Studies is doing under the spotlight is really looking, how do we educate our community? How do we educate our men and our boys to understand that sexual harassment is not just, it has serious implication emotionally, psychologically, that it scars. So we're talking about educating our people about what we considered norm is no longer norm. Domestic violence is not a man and woman business. It is a society business. Child abuse is not just an incident that happens in a family. It impacts the entire society. So we need to look at how do we retrain and recalibrate what our values are. How do we begin to educate ourselves to know that these things are not healthy? How do we begin to talk? She talked about conversations. We are not a people who understand mediation and solving issues through dialogue. So we really need to retrain, and it really has to begin in the education system, where I believe it should be compulsory from the first grade, that we train our children to discuss. We train our children to solve conflicts, not through fighting and bullying, but through talking. We look at including people, that it's okay if you differ with someone's opinion. It doesn't mean you have to fight them or that they have to become your enemy. So it's a total re-looking at our culture, re-looking at those things that no longer serve us, and coming up with solutions that are inclusive and that really builds on who we are and respect people's individual humanity and uniqueness.
Thank you, Professor Adisa. You have reflected on some of the unique elements about our context and our culture, which have definitely impacted on those numbers, on the situation for women and girls in a pandemic. Donna Scott-Motley, continuing on the discussion about, the gender norms, we heard Minister Terrelong said, there are no gender roles. There are no specific gender roles like that, especially within a household context. Do you believe that there are harmful gender norms in Jamaica contributing to the negative impact of the pandemic on women and girls?
Thank you for asking me that question. 77.4% of women think that it's natural for a man to be head of the household. There are many women who believe and expect that if you refuse to obey your husband or your partner, it's right for him to beat you. These are facts. And if we don't attack those cultural norms that hold us back, we can't solve some of the problems that we encounter. So as Professor Opel said, we have to make a shift in the way that our young people in particular think, because you have to start there. Let us look for a moment at the harm that gender-based violence does in a household, especially a household where there are children. Because what we're doing is creating new norms for those children. We are saying to them that if the parents resolve their conflict in that way, then it's okay. And so the work that we have to do is tremendous. I believe and I embrace the whole idea of mediation. I think that it should be introduced in schools, mediation and conflict resolution. But I also think that part of our parenting solution has to be targeted and focused so that we make people understand that a man doesn't dominate a woman, that in the society, men and women are equal partners, that the problems which women encounter are not exclusive to women, but they are human problems. And I think if we turn the conversation that way, then we can begin the shift.
Thank you. We're still talking about the impact in the pandemic, Mrs. Holness. You've been on the ground. I hear that you and MP Cuthbert Flynn, sometimes you're in areas where not even a donkey can walk. So when you go into the communities, when you speak to families, when you speak to women, what is the impression of the situation on the ground that you're getting?
We do have a significant responsibility as leaders to lead in a way that both shows an example of what you would like to see and also appreciating that you're in a position that you're able to teach. So my constituency had the coveted benefit of having had the first COVID case. It was in Bull Bay, and it required that I literally had to go in every single day to talk to individuals. They quickly appreciated how important it was for them individually, male and female, and collectively, to take responsibility to ensure our experience was significantly low. But as COVID progressed, the attitude changed. Everybody decided, I can't be bothered, I don't know why I need to wear any mask, and it really doesn't matter one way or another unless a member of my family is being affected. So again, it required leadership to go in. And if I said to someone, put on your mask, it came out of the pocket very quickly and went on the face very quickly. So it does require that type of intervention. A rural seat for me has a lot of my women in farming. So where you have persons in Jamaica, they are in tourism, significantly impacted. Persons who would have been housekeepers, significantly impacted. Many of my constituents who are females, thankfully, are still in a position that they're able to earn. But they are still faced with having to either work from home, work on the farm, and now they have all the children that they're responsible to teach. Unfortunately for my constituency, and every time it is generalized, many of our mothers are not even able to read. So how are they going to take up that tablet and be required to sit down and teach their children whatever the teacher has put out for that day? So practically for me, a lot of my children are suffering emotionally because they're not able to get up and go out and be at school. They're living in cramped spaces, living with uncle, cousin that they would rather to be away from during the day and be at school because it's a savior. Many of our women are in the same position. If I were out at work, I would have the freedom mentally of being away from my spouse for a little while. Now we're all cramped in the house. So I would hope that a lot more representatives get up and spend a lot more time out there. We are better prepared to sort of appreciate the sanitation requirements, the protocols that we need to observe. We are in a position to be able to teach and train our own constituents that this is what is going to be required. Because if collectively we don't get ourselves out of this position very quickly. This morning we moved from 726 cases yesterday up into the 800s, going up into 900s. We have to appreciate that despite our leaders getting up and going out there and talking to us, if we do not follow the necessary protocols, if we do not understand and appreciate that each and every one of us get our country back to a place where we're able to go to school in a normal way, where we're able, particularly as women, to work in the way that we used to, we are going to suffer seriously.
Thank you. Wow. MP Cuthbert Flynn, I want to hear, Minister, what is the situation in your constituency? So I'm asking you to take off the minister hat for a second because you're in health anyway, and just put on the Member of Parliament, a rural constituency. Rural constituencies, now I know that because I'm a country girl. And Professor Adisa, I'm not sure if you've seen that, but anecdotally, then I would say, we see that some of the gender norms, they stand up a little bit stronger in our rural communities, rural constituencies. So reflecting on that, reflecting on the pandemic and the impact on women and girls, what's the situation you're seeing?
I have very similar situations to MP Holness, and one of the depressing phone calls that I know that my office gets and that I get is hunger. A lot of the women who were possibly helpers, they're not able to actually go out, especially initially when the pandemic started. As you know, they were taking public transportation, and so they had to stop working. And I have to sit and listen, watch women cry, calling and saying they have 4 children, they are hungry, they can't take care of them. I now have to find solutions for those women, for those families. And I am equally in some of the parts of my constituents farming. And so you have to give them other options. What else can you do? Okay, can you buy and sell? Some of them, they used to sell at the school gate. That is no longer. So they have to find other options to find work. So we take home a lot. I know a lot of people, they pressure us as members of parliament. We get a lot of cussing that we're this or that, but we have to give emotional support. We take a lot of these things home, especially I do. I take a lot of these burdens home because I can't solve everything. And you hear the cries. I closed my office because the numbers are rising. Because I went in a couple weeks ago and it was mainly elderly coming into the office. And really what they want is just food. And I know that we had the care packages earlier, but I know that from our Constituency Development Fund, we have funding where that is going to have to be a part of us, I believe, going forward into this financial year to help out with some of those, things that's happening in the constituency. Another thing with the mask, the fact that the numbers are rising, I am concerned because a lot of them, when you ask them about it, I'm doing my little due diligence now, asking about the vaccine. Are you going to be taking the vaccine? And a lot of them, even though COVID is there, they're saying COVID doesn't exist and we don't need to wear a mask. When you go into, I went in the constituency this weekend, and of course, as they're approaching my car, I'm putting on my mask, and then they go into their pockets to take out their mask because they know I said, you cannot come too close to the car. But you have to reinforce, we have to constantly as leaders, and they see us as such because they do comply when we ask them to. Because of the natural respect that they have for their members of parliament. And so what we have to do is the constant talking to our constituents, explaining to them about the vaccine, explaining to them about the importance of their personal responsibility, and of course, giving that aid, the assistance that we can to the families who are facing the critical challenges right now, not having that job, not able to go to work as that helper in that household. And so our role is very critical. A lot of times, as I said, people see us as, something else, but we are many things. We wear many hats. And, I'm hoping that with the vaccination coming on board, hopefully we get that today, and then we vaccine our frontline workers and others, that many of my constituents, I'm pleading to you now, that you will take up the offer and get vaccinated, and also to continue to social distance, to wear your mask, because COVID is in West Rural St. Andrew.
Thank you so much, MP. So, we have the gender-based violence. We have the burden of all the jobs that women have to do. And then you have the food inequality, which is now a reality for many poor women. We have a lot to do, and the role of women in Jamaica's economic recovery is clearly going to be significant. It has to be significant, so we must focus a lot on that. Thank you so much for sharing those very great insights with me. Now, we cannot talk about supporting women in our recovery without addressing the very real issue of violence against women and girls. Let's hear, therefore, from 2 more of our parliamentarians.
Nancy Morrison, Member of Parliament for St. Catherine, Northeastern Jamaica. Responding to the urgent needs of women in the darkest periods of adversity is the truest test of our effectiveness as women parliamentarians. Many of our women and girls are reeling from the havoc wrought on their independence, safety, and well-being from the ravages of the COVID-19 pandemic. Jobs have been lost, and the ripple effect is seeing desperation as many of our women and girls struggle to afford food, pay for their bills, pursue education, and afford basic sanitary necessities, afford health care, take care of their children, and equally worrying, many of these women are on shutdown in a shared home with their abuser or having to depend on the resources of toxic partners. Women in these vulnerable circumstances need us now, not tomorrow, now. Women empowerment is not an ideology. It is a commitment for action. As Member of Parliament, I am using my reach and my access to help women and girls in my constituency by making a targeted and deliberate effort to reach them and to bring them relief to their unique situations. I urge women parliamentarians to make provision within the resources allocated to them, and more importantly, to use the floor of Parliament to speak up for women. Speak up to have these needs represented in the budget. Speak up for targeted social intervention. Speak up for their safety. Ensure that shelters for women are fully functional, for example. Speak up for online access and even affording devices. I am speaking up. I am calling for support for vulnerable women here in Jamaica and across the world. It is a call for action.
Hello, my name is Lisa Hanno, and I'm the Member of Parliament for Southeast St. Ann and the Opposition spokesperson on Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. I'm also one of the few women who sit in the lower house of the Jamaican Parliament. I'm happy to be speaking to you today because domestic abuse and female domestic abuse in Jamaica is something that I'm very passionate about. As a Member of Parliament, I can tell you, we see a lot of women who come to my office and who I see in my communities who are suffering from emotional abuse, physical abuse. And if you look at the statistics in Jamaica, you'll see that 1 in every 4 women actually experience intimate partner abuse, and 1 in every 3 women experience some form of emotional abuse in their lives. The UN study of 2019 suggested that Jamaica had the highest rate, or the second highest rate of femicide in the world. Those are startling statistics for a country with our population and for a country where the majority of our women are breadwinners of our society and really are the bedrock of our society. So we have to do something. How will I use my voice? To amplify it, to talk to women, to empower women, and certainly to continue to be in the communities and give them some sense of hope. But we have to do more. As a country, we have to have programs that financially empower women. And we have to stimulate how they're going to make money, whether through community projects, whether through training, education. We have to get our women back to school. Many of them because they started to have children very young, and many of them because they've dropped out of school, just completely did not finish their education and have no subjects to be able to have a job. So those are the systemic things that we have to look at. And I really believe that there has to be some form of affirmative action in Jamaica that targets our women, especially our women in rural areas, especially our women in inner cities, because empowerment, just as a word, doesn't happen. It has to start with the political will to make it happen.
Thank you so much for those reflections, parliamentarians. Now, if we were all following the videos, and you know I'm going to have to drill down to some commitments, and I'm sure the UN and the EU team would be very happy for me to drill down to some commitments from you. Let us start with MP Cuthbert Flynn. How do you see your personal role in advancing gender equality and ending gender-based violence?
Thank you for that. Again, let me just say, I also get the telephone calls. We all do. And I remember having to walk through and a lady who was being abused at home and did not know what to do, didn't know where to go. So I have to actually thank Minister Babsy Grange, Honorable Minister Babsy Grange, for the two safe places that we have now, and I believe more. I think we have funding for 2 more. And I think those are some of the things that we need. We need more than 4 on the island for sure. We need safe spaces for women to get away. We also need for the police, when women go to report abuse, that they must take it serious. It must not be something that you brush to the side. And I think I need to see stronger legislation with as far as the fines. I think the fines not enough right now. When you look at some of what's happening, some of the things that's happening to our women, I think maybe most times they do not report because they think nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to become of this, and they're afraid. They're not empowered, number one, to really do much, to leave the home because they have nowhere to go. So I think first what we must do as legislators, we must look at the legislation as women and see where some of these things affect our women and our girls and make changes to those legislation. That I can say I'm committed to doing that as a parliamentarian,
yes.
To make sure that now that we have a larger number of women in the parliament, we must now look at the legislation that affects our women and our girls and look to see where those laws are outdated and make sure that we enact new laws and put in place the proper measures to safeguard our women and our children. That I am definitely committed to doing.
Minister Cuthbert Flynn, you have a 4-year legislative window right now. And I mean, I'm not working with the UN or the EU, but I'm going to be following up on those commitments that you've made, at least to start. Because with collaboration, as MP Holness said, you can complete the work. All right. So, but no, you know what? Before I get your commitment, Professor Disa, what are some of the stereotypes of women in power? And how do you think those impact on women's participation?
Well, I think one of the stereotypes is that we're emotional, and that is viewed as negative. And what we've seen certainly through women leadership for COVID-19, that emotional nurturing aspect of us have in fact made the leadership where women are leading and they're caring for their community and the nurturing that they have employed, and therefore the various rules and regulations that they have implemented, those very traits of emotional nurturingness have in fact shown to be very effective in helping us through this COVID-19. So those are two of the primary thing. And of course, women in leadership are also conversely seen as being aggressive. The things that a man does that is oftentimes not even considered as anything, a woman says it or does it, and oh, you're being aggressive, you're or wanting too much. So I think those are some of the negative things. But we understand, and those of us who are really with a global perspective and a futuristic perspective understand that exactly what we need. That women, because of their nurturing ability to multitask, have proven to be much more effective in leadership, and much more because a woman is always concerned about all of the children and all of the various steps, and are therefore much more inclusive in terms of how do we move forward, making sure everybody gets fed, making sure all the homework gets done, and that then trickles down and reverberates into the management of constituencies and the larger society.
Yes. All right. So, Mrs. Holness, you have risen above some of those stereotypes, right? What do you see as your personal role in ending gender-based violence in Jamaica and creating a more equal society for women and girls?
So I will, for the foreseeable future, be a part of the legislative process and will give the necessary support in respect of issues that surround women and their empowerment in society. However, I'll also say we do have some legislations, like equal pay. It is legislated, but it is not practiced. And so for me as a representative, I try to approach problems in a very practical way, and that will continue to be my own commitment. In my constituency, I have set up businesses that are run and operated by women. You can take your child to work with ease. So our juice factory is doing very well and supplying schools, all women from the constituency. For persons in my more rural area in Kintyre, in the Dallas Castle area, they have also had a business operating with their dried fruits. We have excessive amount of mangoes and fruits that you can almost throw away. We have made businesses from them, including tamarind ball and tamarind juice. And they have been doing well. They do honey, they do soaps, they have been doing well, and we would want to continue to empower them. I have gone through the process as well as it relates to the issue of gender-based violence, to not just rely on the police who cannot necessarily make it there in time, and not necessarily rely on mediation only through the courts, but have engaged the justice of the peace that we have in the constituency, and we do have many of them, and the church. You'd be surprised how many people are happy to go and sit down with the pastor and explain to him what is going on at home. So most of my constituents attend church either on a Saturday or on a Sunday, and it's an opportunity for them to speak with the elder or speak with the pastors when they have an issue. They know my ears will always be open. They can drop into the office at any time. During this COVID time, I have actually kept the office open. We are just moved, having to refurbish, but we continue because we have the same challenge. We are required to be able to provide basic food. And I am opening a vegetable garden, massive vegetable garden, for our women to come out again and take a month each. We have 24 farmers group, and I'm calling on all of them to come out and take charge of the garden. And why? Because instead of continuing to give our women, who are the major breadwinners, who are the ones suffering, who are the ones who have to provide food for their family, just the regular rice and cornmeal and canned food, I decided I wanted to be able every month to give them lettuce and tomato and carrots and cabbage and the necessary greens, because it is also a vital part of making sure their family receive the nutrients that they require. So as a female parliamentarian, I think we remain forever creative. Strawberries, which I promoted in my own constituency, I want every constituent to taste. Some of the things we take for granted, our women and our men in the constituencies do not get to experience them. So for me, you will be seeing that big farm plot that is only for the purpose of ensuring that we are able to offer fruits and vegetables right across the constituency to our senior citizens and to our women who nurture the family.
That's that empathetic and innovative leadership coming through. Thank you very much. Senator Scott Motley, we've heard in the conversations this morning about gender-responsive budgeting being necessary. We've heard about women-led parliamentary caucuses being called for and commitments to review legislation. Are there any other particular initiatives or mechanisms that you think should be supported to help advance the agenda of women and girls?
Before I comment on that, I want to speak to the legislative role. because I think that is the most important role that a parliamentarian can play. As an attorney at law, I see a lot of women who are victims of abuse. And the interesting thing about it is that it is almost as though they come to you for therapy. So they come and they talk and they pour out their soul. But when they leave, you know, they're not going to come back. They're not going to take it any further. And one of the things that I want to do is to strengthen the Domestic Violence Act. When it was enacted, it was a good tool. But as it has been implemented, we have found the weaknesses in it. If you breach an order of the court, your fine is only $10,000. How can that work? So we need to strengthen our protection for our women and children. I know I'm not answering the question that you asked.
No, but you're making a very important point. Thank you.
I don't want to hear gender-based violence being referred to as GBV. I hate it. Say it out loud. It's gender-based violence, and it means that a man thinks he has a right to beat a woman. I want to hear the word violence in it because I want to strongly communicate what it means. Going back to now your question, I think the caucus actually is the most important suggestion. And if you had not raised it before, that is what I would have recommended. Women need to work across the aisle. Women need to put aside partisan behavior to come together in a way that can strengthen women's rights. And when there was a time when I used to be one of the trainers in the Women's Political Caucus. The Women's Political Caucus was formed in about 1991 when a group of women, very much like we are doing now, just sat down and spoke about things happening in the political arena. And we found out that the things we had in common were far more than the things that separated us. And it was Jeanette Grant Woodham of blessed memory who said, we need a women's political caucus. We worked together. We trained women who wanted to be candidates or campaign managers. It was mandatory that you had to have one JLP woman and one PNP woman. And we trained so many women. And sometimes I feel so proud when I see the women stepping up and actually challenging, actually participating in representational politics. So I think the caucus is important. And I think that will set an example. When people of different political persuasions work together, we set an example for the country to follow. Because we can show that we are really interested in national development and national progress. So what I think is important has already been said. But I want to emphasize it because I think it's so fundamental to progress. And one comment on what Mrs. Honus said. That farm, in 2011, the FAO did a study. And they determined that if women farmers had the same kind of access to money and fertilizers and tools as male farmers did, we could move the production from 2.5% to 4%. Isn't that just absolutely awesome? Yes. And those are the things, we have to look at things differently. That's how gender-based budgeting comes in. It's not budgeting for women, not to give a woman a money to start a thing, but to help women to move the nation forward.
Love that perspective. Thank you. Mrs. Holness?
To hear Donna saying again, I'm an attorney, and she said earlier she's a member of my constituency. So I met with an attorney earlier this week, and I asked her to set up in my constituency office something of a legal aid, because too many persons in the constituency got into issues because of land or whatever the quarrel was, and it resulted into some act of violence or death. As women here today, I am going to be asking you to join me with a group or team of female attorneys, and we will take on the issues of women. So in a very practical way, if you're having a challenge, you have an attorney you can come to who will sit with you and who will walk you through that process. We already have in the ministry a minister in Olivia Grange who has set up some amount of shelter if it is required. And I believe collectively we will be able to find a solution for empowerment through employment, find the solutions in a safe house, and find a legal solution to be able to walk our women through the process. So I'm calling on you today.
Multifaceted responses and a call to action from right on the stage. What a fantastic discussion. Thank you so much, my esteemed panelists, for everything that you have shared, for your commitments and for the calls to action. Now, before we close, let's hear our final video from the youngest senator ever appointed in Jamaica, Senator Gabriela Morris.
International Women's Day. As a political representative, I leverage my leadership by participating in the legislative process, which allows for women and girls to be safeguarded, supported, and protected. Despite the challenges of the COVID pandemic, we must continue to challenge systems of inequality and allow our women and girls to reach their full potential. Building back from COVID depends on me and you. How do you lead for equality?
Senator Morris there. Now, for those of you who have tuned in, I hope that you felt the call to action, you felt the commitment, and that we appropriately gave attention and voice to the issues that women face. Now, as we close, I'm going to ask each of our panelists just 30 seconds. For this International Women's Day, one thing you're celebrating and one thing you're committing to. And we'll begin with Professor Adisa.
I am celebrating life, and I am committing to continuing to educate all the people I encounter about the responsibility and the need for gender equity and equality. I am committing to our well-being and our education.
I'm also educating, well, to life.
Celebrating life.
I'm also celebrating life, and will continue to empower. Will try my endeavor best to empower our women and our girls, not just in my constituency, but wherever I go in this beautiful land we call Jamaica.
I am celebrating life. In this COVID time, you wake up and you just feel different because you understand how significant it is to be healthy. I am committing to mentoring young women, as I try to do all the time. And I am committing to using my skills to assist other persons. I'm also committing to reviewing legislation which needs to be changed or needs to be strengthened for the protection of women.
I'm celebrating the many women who charted the course before me today, because they've helped me to be the woman that I am, a professional, an achiever. They started it, they charted the course. And as such, my commitment is to continue that process and fight for all women, those especially in Jamaica. My job is to ensure that you see no inequality between yourself and your male counterpart. that you understand that you're an equal and full partner in achieving the best for yourself, your community, your family, and indeed Jamaica.
Thank you so much to these phenomenal women in leadership who shared with us today. At the end of the day, I think it's appropriate for me to make my commitment too. I'm celebrating all the women that have made today possible. For women who have come before me, for all the women who have sat on this panel, for all the women who have worked behind the scenes, whether with the United Nations or with the European Union, and of course, on screen, our sign language communicator, Antoinette Aiken. Happy International Women's Day to you as well. To all the women who have tuned in, I'm also celebrating you because you know what? We're here. We're here and we can make a difference because we still have life. I'm committing to raising a son who will respect women and who will respect girls and treat them as his equal. I'm committing to, you know what? Staying enough, MP Wholeness. Because when I'm enough, I get to learn and someone gets to see and some little girl might think, I can do that. I see myself in that person. And so I'm just committing to continuing to open doors as we all strive to achieve gender equality and end gender-based violence. I also commit to continue to share resources so women can know where opportunities exist for them to achieve more, learn more, or for them to feel safe. So remember, you can continue to check out the Spotlight Initiative and support the work that the European Union and the United Nations are doing to end gender-based violence. In fact, remember their hashtag for the Spotlight Initiative is hashtag Spotlight End Violence. This has been a fantastic morning celebrating International Women's Day. Not only are we celebrating the achievements of women in leadership, women at the grassroots levels who continue to work to make differences, but also we recognize this as a call to action, a grand opportunity for us to do more and achieve more for all women and girls. Several people played an important part in this ceremony, and let me thank the women. Isn't it amazing that I get to thank so many women who were with us for the opening ceremony? We want to specifically thank from the United Nations, Mariko Kogashima, and also from the European Union, Ambassador Marianne Van Steen. We also had two ministers with us this morning. They are Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith and, of course, Minister Olivia Grange. I'd like to thank our panelists, parliamentarians, women in academia, just fantastic leaders who have been here with us. The teams from the European Union and the United Nations who made today's celebration, conversation, and call to action possible. Additionally, we'd like to thank the Jamaica Information Service, JIS, for event production, Terra Nova for hosting us safely and in accordance with all the necessary protocols. We'd like to thank Vantage One for the beautiful decor, Kenil Gale for photography and video production. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a wonderful team with us, and guess what? For all the women hearing the sound of my voice, for all the women viewing, for all the women seeing the communication from Antoinette, happy International Women's Day. Choose to challenge, choose to be a part of creating the change we want to see in the world. Have a fantastic day, and it was my pleasure taking you through today's proceedings. I'm Kamisha Swaby.